Senator Susan Collins says U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has ceased its enhanced operations in Maine. Collins says this comes after several direct communications between herself and Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem. Collins releasing a statement saying, in part, while the Department of Homeland Security does not confirm law enforcement operations, I can report Secretary Noem has informed me that ICE has ended its enhanced activities in the state of Maine. There are currently no ongoing or planned large-scale ICE operations here. Collins will go on to say, I appreciate the Secretary's willingness to listen to and consider my recommendations and her personal attention to the situation in Maine. We did reach out to Senator Collins' office for clarification on what is considered enhanced activities. While her office says DHS can't give details or the number of agents entering or exiting a state, they expect the level of activity from immigrations and customs enforcement entities to return to levels Mainers experienced prior to the announcement of Operation Catch of the Day. They added they believe the decision to roll back operations was not due to DHS's goals for Catch of the Day being met, but rather to reduce tensions in the region. Democratic Congresswoman Shelley Pingree releasing a statement this morning saying, in part, if these enhanced operations have in fact ceased, that may reduce the visible federal presence in our state. The unfortunate reality is ending this surge and removing additional officers does not mean a return to how immigration enforcement functioned in Maine for many years. What we have seen over the past year is radically different. On January 22nd, I sent a former oversight letter to Secretary Noem asking for a full accounting of who was detained, under what legal authority, and where individuals were taken. I have received no response. Governor Mills also reacting to the news, saying, quote, I'm incredibly proud of the people of Maine who defended our values and who supported those who were afraid to leave their homes, as well as the small businesses who supported and fought to protect the rights of their employees and their families.